Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm giving my first impressions of Stonesaga from Games. Games, who have done Stars of Arcarios and Mythwind, and now they are doing Stonesaga, a 1 to 4 player game of, well, primarily survival, as you wander into a hidden alley and start encountering the various behemoths within, and trying to survive and make sure that you don't run out of energy and die, and all these. It's a survival game, kind of. We'll get into it. But before we do, this is a prototype, all rules, components, all that stuff subject to change. And this is over on Kickstarter. I'll have a link down below. You can check that out. And like I said already, this is very much a first impressions. This is a game that's hard to give a very strongly detailed opinion on. Well, I can give a detailed opinion on what I encountered, but I can't give you a detailed opinion on the entire thing because, well, it's a campaign system of, I believe, around 20 plus scenarios or somewhere along that line, of which we have 3, and it escalates as you go. The first scenario is literally just walking you through the actions. From there, 2 and 3 give you a taste of this adventure and the world that's within, but there's a lot to unlock here. There's a lot to unpack and a lot to get into, so I will tell you every single thing I think, and I will go over all that, and I will have final thoughts and tentative ratings and all that stuff, but very much a first impressions. Stonesaga is a game of survival. In the game, you're going to be controlling various characters. You're going to be building up. This is not the characters, this is a behemoth. Let me move this off to the side. You have the various characters you'll be playing in the game. You're going to have them over here. You're going to start the game by building out a various character card. You're going to have their stats. You're going to roll dice. You're going to assign those stats. You're going to start picking the various traits they are. You're going to pick their specific board. And then from there, you're trying to figure out how you survive in this world. This first scenario is going to guide you through the actions you can take, because there's a bunch of things you can do. But the general cycle of the game is you go through a sequence of day actions. You go through a sequence of the night taking its effects, which generally have you recovering energy and or bad things happening, and are having night events, which you'll have to roll dice and take tests based on the various attributes you have. But the core idea is you're trying to survive day by day. You need to make sure to eat, to drink, to make sure to deal with the various wounds and illnesses that are coming your way. As you encounter different things, you're going to go foraging, and maybe you'll gather some trees, maybe you'll gather some nuts or some leaves, or maybe you'll get eaten by or bitten, because eaten would imply you die. Maybe you get attacked by a wild animal, and now you have a bunch of major injuries that you slowly need to recover from across the next several days. That's the kind of cycle of gameplay. You take a bunch of actions, utilizing your energy on your board. You go through the night phase, you recover some of the energy depending on player count, depending on whether you're in shelter or not, depending on what you have or haven't eaten, you'll recover energy up to a maximum of 5, or at least current maximum of 5. I have no clue how this game evolves from there. And then past that, the reason you're doing all this is you are trying to go through your goals in the game. You're going to have specific goals you're going through that the game will give you. You're going to have an overarching scenario card. This is scenario 2 over here, and the game's going to give you specific goals you have, as well as either set aside goals, which are generally unlocked as you go through different things, or epoch goals that are going to, epoch, by the way, fun fact, is pronounced epoch or epic depending on where you live. Epoch goals that you're going to have to deal with that across several different missions that are just generally in play, that slowly give your civilization almost a taste. Not really civilization, but your party, your group. You have a taste of the way you unlock depending on the things you do, depending on you hunt more animals or forage for more trees, depending on the types of buildings you build. Are they more permanent or are they more mobile? Different things will be happening as you go through the game, but ultimately the core idea is you're trying to go through these goals, and you're trying to do so before time runs out. There's not a literal clock on the game, but there is an activity tracker that you'll be earning throughout the night phases. You'll be earning different activity points, and earning is not necessarily a good thing, because earning will eventually, it's going to be tracked over here on this activity tracker, and as you go up on the activity tracker, events will happen, things will happen, and eventually you will run out of time. It doesn't mean you lost, it just means that the scenario unfolded differently than it was supposed to, and you failed in your goals, so I guess it means you lost. But fail forward lost. Things continue, the game evolves, you continue going through the scenario as you figure out how you move from one story to the next, as you unlock different things within this world. Like I said already, the first scenario is kind of just a slow step-by-step of go ahead and gather water from a river, go ahead and, start fishing in the river, using their own little fishing mini puzzle. I'm not going to go through every single thing the game does, but there are different mini puzzles as far as how you do different things. You'll grab a fishing card, you'll line up one side, you'll take another fishing card, line up these spots along the river, you're going to go ahead and do a results card, which this has to go face down at first, and then from there you'll go ahead and you'll roll a bunch of dice, assign them, and then flip the results card and see what happened as you went fishing. So you have little fishing mini games as you go through it. You're going to have different foraging mini games depending on the forest or plains. There's different scenarios you can go, different biomes you can be in, but you'll have different little mini games where you go ahead and draw 2 cards and figure out, oh no, do you want to encounter this horrible creature who's in your face, or alternatively do you want to try to go ahead and go hunting for whatever's going on over here, and then you'll shuffle these back in and then draw 2 more cards. The problem is at times you're going to start gathering cards that have, you know, different wild monsters on them. Maybe you particularly want to get your hands on, I don't know, we're going to go say for the, I don't know what we want over here, but the trees. We want the trees over here, so we're going to gather that card. There's trees on both, honestly, but that means the monster's kind of in the background. And as the monster's in play, you have to start choosing cards with monsters because you are starting to deal with the monsters in the area around you. And so you're going on these foraging things which do have an element of danger. Are you going to hunt creatures? Are you going to grab various components? Or are you going to have to deal with the wild thing out there in the forest? You have a bunch of these different options you go through. Again, that first scenario guides you through all these aspects of how to go, how to go mining in different regions and gather different tokens from this bag, having both good things and potentially bad things happen to you depending on the sign in play. You're going to be going through all the basic actions of the game, being taught what to do, how to process materials. So you're going to be gathering materials in the game that will go into your bag. You're going to be holding on to materials. You're going to be holding on to food and, you know, fishing and all these different things. But the problem is, as you go through the game, you have the opportunity to process materials where you use various symbols on the tools you have, or even on some of the materials. You know, stones at the end of the day both can be processed into something shinier and prettier, but they also can be used to process because they're sharp and you can polish and use them, and you can use those materials to flip and arrange other materials to break into the husks of wheat by using a stone to pound away at it, and now you have access to that food that will preserve itself, as opposed to the meat and fish that will slowly decay if you don't utilize it. So you have all these elements of the game that the game is slowly introducing yourself to in that first scenario, at which point you wander into scenario 2. There's still more to unlock. There's still more to discover in this game. You're going to be wandering around the map. That's going to be something you explore in scenario 1. You're going to be spending energy to move to a new tile, seeing what's on that tile. Every element on the tile has different interaction points. You can't gather water from a river if there's no river on your tile. You have to have a source of water. Same thing with the various mining. You have to be able to mine at chasms, at mountains. You have to have those things around you. You can't go foraging in the forest unless there is a forest. You're trying to be mindful of what's on these terrain elements. You're trying to be mindful of whether you're on the same tiles as other characters or not. That will define the activity, the night cards, and how they affect you at doing night, and how fast that activity tracker moves up across the course of the scenario. You're going to be making all these choices as you explore the world around you, as you build the world around you. This tile over here, it's not the only one. You're going to have trays and trays of tiles that you can slowly unlock and put more into play, gathering more tiles and putting more of them into play, and again, building that world around you. That aspect of the world is constantly developing. There is a fog of war element. You can kind of vaguely see that there's mountains in this tile, and you can use that to your knowledge. You can use that kind of hidden information to help guide you in this game as you move to new locations on the board and start making camp and building fires and trying to survive the night. Like I said already, the second scenario is going to guide you into new things. Second scenario will have you, dealing with outposts and building village and dealing with the various buildings and crafting items. I think you actually do that in the first scenario. You're going to be crafting items. That's a huge element of the game that is incredibly impactful. You're going to have various components. You're going to gather wood from the forest, and you're going to go ahead and sharpen that shark's tooth. And then maybe you combine the two of them, because maybe the two of them together make something. Maybe if you take a sharpened, sharp thingy and stick it on the end of a piece of wood, you have something. What might you have? That's kind of something I'll leave you to discover, the elements that you'll compose in this game, but there's a strong crafting element to this game. You're going to have a ton of materials and resources at your disposal, and the way you orient those materials, the way you combine them, you're going to go through this codex over here and flip through and see if you actually built something or not. When you combine those elements, you get there, and either you found something, and you can now go through the giant stack of items. There's a giant stack of items over here. You can go through that whole entire stack and try to find that specific thing that you found, that gear that might fall apart. You'll make a note of that recipe in your journal. You'll go to your party journal. You make a note that this plus this, save it for the ages, inscribe it on the cave walls, as it were. But now, forever, you know that when you combine these things, you can make that other thing. Because the thing you have might break. It might go away. You might not be able to hold it from scenario to scenario because there's a limit of what you can carry over from one scenario to the next as you go through the game. Sometimes you'll fail. When you fail in the game, it's going to be like, hey, that's not the best idea, but what if you use this instead of that? There's small little hints or nuances when you do find yourself getting close to something, which is helpful. It means you're not totally throwing pasta at the wall and seeing what will stick in this game. Like I said already, in the second scenario, you'll get those outposts. You're going to start going through the process of building out an outpost, but you might need tools to get there, because building an outpost in a wooded land or in the mountains, those require different tools to help you out. So you have to first figure out the tools you need. But then from there, you'll go ahead and build that outpost. But then you're going to start crafting structures, things you can build in the outpost that will help you store things, help you use things, help you conserve energy or utilize things in different ways as you go through the game. And again, that will become part of the outpost. You're going to grab the outpost cards, if I can find them here. They're somewhere over here. There's going to be a bunch of outpost cards. Here they are. You're going to grab these outpost cards and actually write down the name of the outpost, what's on it, the structures on it. Again, the world is building around you. You're going to be making notes in your journal. You're going to be preserving the land you're building. You're going to be noting what was built in the outpost and how that begins and starts off as you start the next scenario, possibly starting off with the outpost. And then the third scenario, you'll start encountering the behemoths that wander the land. These are these large roving creatures whose goals aren't quite clear, who interact with you in different ways. They're not necessarily violent, but that doesn't mean they can't damage or hurt you as the game progresses, and you have to be mindful of that as you go through this, and that's kind of where it ends for me. That's kind of what I have. I have a taste of the game. I have a taste of all the elements slowly being introduced. I shouldn't say all the elements. I don't know what additional elements there are. But I have a taste of some of the core elements at play, some of the core puzzles as you wander through the codex, as you make different encounters and interactions and slowly discover and explore the world around you, as the behemoths make their intent more or less clear as the game progresses. And the choices you make have impacts on the world, how you choose to engage with things, the type of things you choose to do. There's a whole goal system that splits and arcs into different goals. If you've done this, you'll unlock that goal, and this other goal will forever be gone. The civilization, the world, the story, everything is evolving around the choices you make. And then again, when time runs out, you not really lose so much as haven't really accomplished what you set out to do. That's kind of what I have for Stonesaga. That's the current system I have. A lot of skill tests you'll be making, a lot of rolling dice against the stats you've built, a degree of legend in the game. Legend is something that I haven't really heavily interacted with yet, but the idea of legend is, your characters can move on into legend, and then you can possibly use their traits or stats in the games. You can use that memory of great-granddad Jim over there who once upon a time slayed a, wild mammoth or whatever it is, and you can kind of use that to boost one of your stats or boost one of your traits and then get rid of the card for the game. So you have this aspect of the world remembering the characters you built and utilized as you go through the game. There's lots of that stuff built into it, much of which I haven't seen because I've only seen 3 scenarios into Stonesaga. Which I guess brings me to my to review all that stuff where we are, starting off with ease of play. And again, reminder, this is a prototype, all rules, components, everything on all that stuff, subject to change. But going through the game was actually fairly easy. There's some aspects of rules and things that weren't quite clear. I put it down to a prototype, but they actually kind of broke the game into a full rulebook and a learn to play. And the learn to play did an amazing job guiding you through the game. An amazing job. Like, it really, really brought you through the first scenario very clearly. And then from there, it's like, okay, great. And now reference the rulebook whenever you need. And that really did work for me. It was a great learn to play. That first scenario just really handheld. You don't really make a lot of choices the first game. You make a few kind of semi-choices, but it's really a handheld walkthrough. And then from there, you move into the second and third game. It's not even true, actually. I would say that the first half of the first game is a guided walkthrough, and then from there it's a little bit more, kind of figure out, do your own thing, try to preserve your energy and make sure you don't run out of all the good stuff, and make sure you kind of stay away from all the bad stuff as you go through the game. So ease of play, that learn to play did a great job of walking us into this game, a game that has a lot going on, but it did a great job doing it. As far as the rest of it, table space does grow right now. Right now you're seeing a very condensed area over here. Obviously if you're using the map, it's going to expand a bit more, not necessarily huge, but you'll have multiple map tiles in the game. You're going to be going through that, so a little bit much in terms of table space and components and all that. Game sessions so far, I would say the first one is a little longer for me, just because there was a little bit, once the game stopped holding my hand, there was a small degree of, okay, I'm just going to do stuff, and until I kind of found my pathway and driving forward. But I'd say generally scenarios are going to be in the 60 to 90 minute range, depending on your player count and all that. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, first of all, just the general sense of what this game is doing works well. The general sense of survival, of exploration, of discovery, and the huge amount of that is tied to the goal system, which I really, really like the goal system. The idea that you have a scenario and there's multiple goals kind of in play, and you're both working your way through the scenario goals while having these other goals in the background. So there's these constant kind of missions and side quests and things to do that just keep driving you forward. It's not necessarily a hard game, we'll get more to that later, at least not yet, but it's a game that you're constantly doing something, and you're constantly driven to the next thing because there's just goals, there's a sense of accomplishment. I'm going to go ahead and save that food. I'm going to go ahead and forge, build that fire. You're going to do these different goals that are in the way because they're things, they're little notes you can check off, accomplishments you have, stuff that you got done, and it's a very rewarding system. And that system works well in addition to the crafting and the structures. There's just a lot of building in this game. The idea that as you gather resources, you're going to start comparing them and mixing them up and say, well, this stone might work with that, and what if I combine leather with some twine, and what about the leather with the stone? Will that work? Does this even make sense? There's a degree of just wasting your energy, just guessing, just hoping for the best. But also there's a degree of trying to make educated choices about how the fact that you can use a tendon and a bone together with this and that. I'm trying to keep this a spoiler free and just making stuff up as I go along. But you're going to have that aspect of crafting in the game that is just very, very rewarding to... It's fun. It's fun to open up the codex and realize you discovered a new tool that will be helpful in your journey, but a new tool that you can write down the recipe for the future because you may want to get it back again. That sense of crafting, of refining resources, of trying to figure out how you get there, and also the crafting giving you those hints when you fail. I find that very helpful as well. There's a little limited inventory puzzle over here where you can see players kind of have a bag system over here, and every night you have to kind of make it all fit into your bag. And I do like it with a caveat, I'll get to the caveat in a second, which is there's a little bag here and how you try to make it all work. It's not like a simple, this takes up 2 squares, that takes up 2 squares. You really are trying to make it all work in puzzle, and it's a cute little thing. I do think it might get older a little sooner. Like the first scenario was a little puzzle of trying to like, oh look, I moved this and I moved that, and I actually made that extra thing fit into my bag. As the game progresses, I don't know how meaningful that puzzle is. It's the kind of thing that I don't know if I'd always spend time trying to make every single thing fit. It's rewarding the first few times, but it could become tedious as you go. I would say that if they have different characters, you may as well take advantage of it and have different configurations of bags instead of the same one on every single player card. And again, prototype, that might be something we actually see. But once you're engaging in that kind of puzzle, may as well give everyone a slightly different configuration so it's interesting or fun when you get a new character, how you make it all work this time. But I think it's cute without being incredible or amazing and all that. Past that, the general structures, again, that sense of growth, the crafting, I covered all that. But the behemoths that are wandering around the valley work really well so far as giving you a sense of threat, a sense of just being on the board and slowly moving around based on their own little system of how they move and what terrains they prefer. They're going to be wandering around the board, but the way they engage with the world around them, they feel threatening without actually being threatening. Again, I'm not saying you won't get hurt, I'm not saying you will get hurt, I'm saying they are things. Large things in the valleys around you, and you have to make choices around how you engage with them. And I like the sense that they add to the game, a sense that works well because you have to take them seriously, but they're not necessarily your enemy, at least not yet. Who knows how things will develop or iterate as you go through the game, and so I like that there. In general, the biggest thing I like about Stonesaga is just the general sense of survival and progress that the game gives you. The game constantly rewards you for doing things, for building things, for getting an extra thing, for unlocking, for accomplishing goals, and it does so while giving you a survival system. You have to be mindful of the negative stuff that's happening to you along the way. As far as what I don't like in the game, the sense of some of the actions in the game could be a little boring or tedious, especially if you're doing it again and again and again against, I don't know what the game's going to be, but maybe 30, 40 hours of play, maybe more, I don't know, it depends on how long everything is, but doing the same repeated actions might be boring. Mining is not an action that I find particularly engaging. Even foraging I find is an action that very quickly wore off. Fishing to me actually started off as being one of my least favorite actions, but has become more, I enjoy it more as I go through it. But these actions are interesting in the sense that they give you this little mini puzzles of gathering the things you need to survive, but you always have to be mindful that me playing this game for like 3-4 hours in a prototype is very different than playing it for 30-40 hours across the whole puzzle, and whether those things hold up across that long, I just don't know. I'm inclined to think almost not. There's little mini games to keep you invested, but they aren't challenging, they're just there. And so I think it's something that works right now, but it's something that I'm very cognizant might not work when you're 30 hours into the game, and I don't know what the sense of progress is going to be around that, how actions change or craft or not, because the more they do, the more of a rules overhead you might be adding, but the more you might keep things fresh and interesting as you go through things, and there is that balance there. I'll say I didn't really care for things like writing. There's an aspect of writing in the box lid of, writing here of your accomplishments as you go through the game. I haven't seen how that really impacts the world around me just that much yet, but it's something that I don't know if I necessarily care for. And I'd say for the journal, there are many things, including rules. There are rules and actions that you're supposed to write down in your journal, which I don't mind it necessarily as much for the crafting recipes. That kind of at least makes me feel like, hey, if I write down in my journal this plus this, it kind of makes me feel like I'm writing my own little recipe card, so I'm okay with that. But there are rules, there are actions in the game that the game gives you these excellent play rates, by the way. These little play rates that give you the actions, but double-sided, showing you what the results and how it works. These do a great job as soon as you're done with the initial learn to play. These really help you as far as not having to reference the rules every second, and they're phenomenal. And then sometimes you learn new actions, and you're supposed to write them down in your own journal, and I don't like that at all. I either want stickers or other cards I unlock. The idea of writing down rules in the journal, it's cute when I'm saying that a wood plus a sharp thing equals a spear. That's cute. When I'm trying to write down a rule and an action, I don't want to write that down in my journal. I want the game to give me a sticker or a play rate or something where I don't have to rely on what I wrote down with my horrible handwriting a while ago. Again, the crafting is a little different only because there's a sense of exploration in the crafting already. It's already not built into the rules and built into your imagination, and writing it down is just an affirmation of your imagination as opposed to literally writing down the way something works in the game. So I didn't like that. I'll also say that the game... I'll say this for what I can see others not liking, at least based on my experience. As far as what I can see others not liking, so far, losing doesn't seem that likely. The difficulty doesn't seem that likely. There is a lose concept. There is that idea of time running out. I haven't yet felt really a sense of pressure of, oh no, time will actually run out. Now, I don't know whether that's something that's going to be balanced based on the prototype or not. I don't know yet. I don't know if that's something I'm still working on. It hasn't bothered me yet. Just the fact that there is a timer on the game, just the fact that there is a lose condition, for me has been enough to give me that sense of I need to get things done. You want to try to stay ahead of all the bad things and get your goals done as fast as possible. And again, even though I haven't actually lost, there always is that sense of pressure. There's frequently goals or things in play that say, well, if you're currently at this level of activity, bad things will happen. So even though the full-on losing hasn't been a real pressure, there has been a sense of pressure of staying ahead of other bad things, and that's given me enough of a reason that combined with the sense of exploration has worked for me. But if you're looking for a difficult experience, based on what I've seen from Stonesaga, it isn't that yet. It is a game with a sense of exploration and a game with things that will hurt you along the way, and you're going to do the best you can and try all those things, but losing hasn't been something I've been threatened by yet. Additionally, I'll say it can come down to a math puzzle at times. Very often you're going through a certain amount of energy every day, and you're recovering a certain amount of energy every single day, and so that little puzzle in play often comes down to, well, I'll spend 2 energy to do this, but I'll go ahead and get the 3 food. That'll be enough to last me a few nights, and it'll pay me back at 1 a night, plus as the bonus aspect. Very often these things can come down to math puzzles as you go through the game, as you optimize around, I'll spend this much, but it will cover this much, and I end up with a net positive 1 energy, and I'll use that towards getting my goals done. If you're kind of ignoring that, which you could never do the math ever, then you might end up playing suboptimally and not really getting things done. And if you do pay attention to it, well, it takes away a little bit of the magic when sometimes you're just, mathing out how you have to manage your energy and how you have to recover your energy to ultimately move forward in your goals. As far as instinctive thoughts on Stonesaga, and I'm not calling them final thoughts because I think I need to play this game more before I can actually give a fully formed opinion. My instinctive thoughts are that I currently enjoy what Stonesaga is providing, while being mindful and cautious about how well this holds up across 20 scenarios. How well does that sense of discovery and exploration continue to hold up? For me, every scenario has been new elements. Every scenario has been new things thrown in my face, new aspects of the game that are slowly being introduced to me, and I've liked that sense of goals, I've liked the sense of crafting, and I've liked the sense of having new things thrown my way that have kept this entire experience so far very interesting. I like what's happening. Again, it's not that difficult, but there are things that you're trying to do, and there is a sense of accomplishment in doing it, and I generally like what Stonesaga has been giving me, with the caveat that I don't know where this game goes. I don't know if across the next 5, 10, 15 scenarios, whether it gets more interesting and more overwhelmed and more stuff happening and things are just generally improved and better and amazing, or whether that sense of exploration starts going away. Whether after you've crafted enough things, there's not quite as much to discover. Whether after you start getting introduced to new game elements, the game doesn't really hold up quite as long. I just don't know yet. I like what I've been shown, and I am very curious as far as where this game goes. Instinctively, this is a 4 out of 5 for me. Instinctively. But again, I need to see more before I can rate it. That could go up, it could go down, it could go either way. Right now, I like what Stonesaga is showing me, and I'm very intrigued to see how this game continues to develop as it moves its way from where it is now to showing up on your doorstep. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Mythwind. Mythwind itself, from Games, wasn't a game for me because there literally was no lose condition in that, and I didn't love that, but if you like that general sense of crafting and exploration and all those things, Mythwind did it in a very different sense and may well be a game for you or not. Additionally, if you're looking for a survival game that is brutal and punishing and gives you that sense of survival, but with a whole lot of you're not going to win, I haven't played it, but Robinson Crusoe seems to be the same vein of what Stonesaga is doing, but in a single-shot adventure and with a whole lot more brutality mixed in. And then lastly, I'm going to give you an odd recommendation, but if you like the crafting system in Stonesaga, if you like that sense of combining different things and that sense of discovery, I recommend pulling out your phone and downloading an app called Great Alchemy that will have you going for way too many hours just mixing and matching and combining things, trying to find every single possible element that the game has for you. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.